Good afternoon, all of you. I actually must compliment a speaker from Gujarat, because Gujarat has been doing a lot of great things in the public space where they don't actually have to. So the very fact that government hospitals are NABH or NABL accredited is absolutely wonderful, and I hope that initiative is carried forward. Now, you know, not knowing what my audience was, I thought I'd give it a slightly broader spectrum of discussion and bring it down to where we felt. But I think it's important to know, or at least my perspective as to why one thinks, or what are the enablers of Indian healthcare. I think one of the most important things about the enabler of healthcare is increasing awareness. The people at large, the population at large, know that there is a very high-end kind of care and a very low-end kind of care, and expect that there should be a bridging of the two forms of care. I think there's an increasing life expectancy in an aging population. There is growing affordability, and whether we like it or not, health insurance is increasing, and I think it's a necessary evil, because that's the only way which can create an affordable market in a system which exists. There is no free lunch anywhere in the world. Somebody pays for it. So even if you go to a government hospital, we taxpayers pay for that. It's the revenue which is generated, there's a budget which goes out, and it's paid for. Something is paid for. So there has to be transparency and accountability in healthcare in any environment which we exist. Otherwise, we'll end up very similar to some of the very rich nations where they can't actually be able to take care of their healthcare needs. And these are very important things, because unless the private sector and the public sector look at healthcare as a societal need, a primary need for the country as a whole, we would work at disparate ends of the spectrum, and I don't think we benefit the Indian healthcare sector as such. If you look at it from a perspective of employment and for a perspective of revenue, healthcare is the largest service industry in terms of revenues, and the second largest after education in terms of employment. And I'm talking about government, private, public, the whole bit. And I think, depending upon whose statistics you take, between 5.8 to 6% of the GDP, and perhaps by next year, 7 to 8% of the GDP will be spent in healthcare. And unfortunately, a large amount of that is going to be spent by the private sector, not by the public sector. And this creates certain disparities in the Indian healthcare scenario. So while there's a huge demand, there's a huge need, but government spending has not actually stayed in place with the requirements of healthcare growth as we can see. And so we may have gone up from 0.7 to 1 or 1.2. So in absolute terms, government spending has increased because our GDP has increased. Right? Now, just to give you an idea, the United States, and I'm not saying what is good or bad, the United States spends 17% of its GDP in healthcare. Very big difference, and the economy is much larger than India. Population is much smaller. So there are issues here where there's a huge opportunity, and we expect the growth of this to continue. So the disparity will increase. If you look at it, this is a 2006 slide of where India spends about in 2006 about 4.1%, now 5.8. Compared to the other countries, it's quite different, and even in the BRIC countries, we remain at the lower end of the spectrum. When you take private expenditure, that is people out of pocket, all right? You know, the striking thing about this is that all the poorer countries or the developed countries or the developing countries spend more money in healthcare than a developed country. And again, I'm not here to say what is right or wrong, but this certainly creates an opportunity for people who are at the lower middle class to become BPL very fast if they have an illness which can cost 3 lakhs or 4 lakhs or 5 lakhs. And this is very, very important, because our changing spectrum of disease is such that more and more, it's not, you know, I don't think it's a matter of pride if we say that we are the diabetes capital of the world. Right? We can call about a lot of other things, but that's not something which is to be proud of. Unfortunately, that causes a lot of diseases which are expensive. So we've got to look at models of healthcare which have to be different than the traditional models of healthcare. We have an advantage. We at least claim to have 2,000 years or 3,000 years of what one would call traditional or let's say alternative medicine, depending upon which spectrum you look at. Not all of it works, but some of it works very well. And it should never be this or that. It's time that in our country we should look at it and there's no other place in the world but the government to help facilitate the Ayush and the allopathic forms of medicine, at least where there is complementary nature in prevention, in wellness, in controlling disease progression, that one should look at that as an opportunity. Today we work in completely separate spectrums. And that is unfortunate, and I think that needs to be brought in. Now what are we? We are currently valued in billions of dollars. In US we are expected to go 13% a year, and that is supposed to double. And these are real figures. By the way, this is government, private, everything included. I'll give you an example. Delhi has 38,000 private hospital beds, NCR region, right? Out of which maybe 3,500, 4,000 belong to guys like us, right? Apollo, Fortis, all of that. The rest of it is 30-bed, 25-bed, 10-bed, 15-bed nursing homes. That's all private healthcare. That's how the growth of healthcare is. Now, it's unregulated, it's unmonitored, issues of quality and safety, all of that, but the impact on the individual patients is huge because an adverse event creates a problem. WHO has come out with the fact that 1 out of every 10 admissions in a hospital setting has an adverse event. And this is data from developed countries, that's Canada, US, Europe, etc. I have no idea what it is in India, but I can tell you that it's not less. If it could be more. Well, it could be. I mean, if we had a data which we could say that it would, but it's something. So all of this spectrum, whether we look at the private side or the public side, delivers healthcare. And by the way, I'm not for regulation in any healthcare environment or in any industry, but nonetheless, there should be some form of reporting, there should be some form of collation of quality, etc., which is an opportunity. This is just to tell you that in spite of the growth and in spite of all that's happening, there is a huge shortage of both beds, of physicians, and of nurses when we compare ourselves to any part of the world. And I think that this is an important factor, and unfortunately it takes a minimum of 4.5 years to create a doctor. So even if we start today, it's going to take a little while. So we've got to look at a different model of healthcare delivery. We've seen programs which were started in Gujarat many years ago, but there has to be a concerted effort to create, to license some form of a healthcare practitioner which is other than a clinician who can take care of two primary needs, which is obviously childbirth, so some form of maternal mortality has to be reduced, and then of course infant mortality. And if we look at it, as a nation, we don't actually fare very well in those two parameters of healthcare as we look at. So I think that's an opportunity which one needs to look at. And so the government's perspective there would be on facilitating, creating the licensing program for a paramedical technician or a paramedical doctor or a paramedical nurse who can then be available to provide support and help in the primary healthcare sectors and needs. Because the doctor is going to take a little while, and I don't think that we have the time and the energy to waste. I do believe that it should be taken as a political referendum, and I think that the experience which we've had in Andhra Pradesh, where a person has won the election because of what they've done for healthcare, should be picked on and looked at as something which national political parties should look at. And I believe that this is a right for every individual person to be able to participate in. And as you can see, that the trends in healthcare spending are gradually increasing, and they will. I have not come across a single country in the world which has been able to stabilize the growth of healthcare expenditure. Hasn't happened. I can give you 15 reasons why it keeps going.